is John Hobble.
So let's just stick with this issue of the small boats. If you think about it technically, it's a very easy problem to solve. You simply need to detain everybody who comes here illegally, and then you deport them. That should not be difficult. And if you can't return them because their host countries refuse to take them, you just take them off to a faraway barren island, of which we have got plenty. And as soon as you start doing that, all of these small boats will stop coming. That's what the Australians did, and it's effective. So the question we have to ask is why, even though this has been top of our political agenda for many years now, and even though the problem is getting worse with each year, and even though Keir Starmer, the doyen of the human rights movement, claimed he knew how to solve this problem, he can't. I mean, Starmer said he was going to smash the gangs. The only thing that has been smashed is the records in terms of people coming here every year. So what this shows is a political class which is impotent. And that is highly problematic for a democracy, because we elect people on the basis that they make promises to us which we the people want and which they then carry out. And they are simply failing. And anyone who doesn't face up to that is playing with our democracy, because people will then lose faith in it. Now, Gavin says this has got very little to do with human rights. I disagree. Articles 3, as he's mentioned, and Articles 8 are regularly in play whenever you try to do what you need to do to stop these illegal entrants. Gavin says, well, there's very few declarations of incompatibility made. True, but it's irrelevant. The point is, of the 20 or so that have been made by our Supreme Court, in every single case, or nearly every single case, the government has responded by changing the law. The second point is that few ECHR cases in recent years actually deal with Britain. True, but irrelevant, because there have over the last few decades been plenty of cases involving Britain and other member states in Europe which has established a framework of human rights laws which scuppers the ability of states to do what they need to do to protect their borders. Gavin says only a small number, I think he said 3.5% of people being deported actually challenge them with human rights arguments. True, but irrelevant. Because what it means is that time after time, anyone who wants to deport someone knows they face the risk of a challenge, and you frequently get challenge after challenge. And ultimately, because the system is made so difficult, many in the Home Office and other enforcement agencies simply don't bother. That's one of the reasons why we in this country have such high percentages of asylum seeker grants as compared to applications made. Even for nationalities, where in other countries they have much lower percentages, much lower. It's simply a case of our system saying, look, this is going to be so much trouble, let's just grant him asylum, and then we're done with it. The problem is that the ECHR has weaved a system of controls and restrictions over every public body that deals with these issues, and every court and tribunal, such that there's now no need for anyone to trot off to the ECHR or even to raise a challenge in our domestic courts, because we know the system is compliant with human rights laws. And because it's compliant with human rights laws, you cannot defend our borders. And I could make much the same rights, not just about immigration, but also about policing and crime, about social welfare, in fact, just about any political issue you care to talk about. You will find that all of those policies now take place essentially by threading the eye of the needle. In other words, by politicians only being able to do what human rights laws and their very active lawyers will allow you to do. Now, on the more fundamental question, is this simply a problem of how these laws are being interpreted, and so on and so forth, I would advance three fundamental problems that I have with the very notion of human rights. First is philosophical, which is that they are premised on the idea that there are rights which we have which are both timeless or universal in terms of time and place. I fundamentally disagree. I believe that different cultures and different societies and different nations are different. And moreover, what we think is right today isn't necessarily what we thought was right yesterday, and it certainly won't necessarily accord with what we think tomorrow. So that's the essence of democracy. Democracy is about engaging with changing times and meeting the arguments and aspirations that people have at the particular time. So the notion of a human right, which is universal, is nonsense from a philosophical perspective. Politically, human rights are also very damaging to our democracy, because the essence of democracy is that it is the people who are sovereign. They express that sovereignty by expressing their representatives. The problem is that human rights place limits on what those politicians can do. Sometimes it's done.
45 seconds.
Sometimes the sophisticated argument is, oh, you can't have a democracy unless it also guarantees human rights. I don't agree with that. I think you can trust the people to respect what are legitimate rights of people. Finally, from a constitutional perspective, the notion of human rights is flawed because it puts the judges into a political role. It's often said, and it's true, that it's the role of politics and politicians to make the law, and it's the role of judges to interpret and apply those laws. That's correct. But unfortunately, once you introduce human rights into your constitution, it is very often the human rights laws and lawyers that have the final say.